Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio. Today, we're excited to chat with composer Steve McAllister about his new album, I Hope You're Okay. Well, I hope you're okay. This is an incredible album. Listening to it actually a few times because you should. It's one of those that will take you on your own personal journey, like truly. Yet it's like, as soon as you listen, you push play. And I say that push play, you can get it as a CD, and it will actually just play it and you can stream it and everything. But when you push play, you're going to immediately, it's like going into a house that you're familiar with, but it's all fresh and different and new and original on the inside and the outside, maybe new plants. But there's like this element of familiarity. So it's warm and friendly, invites you in, and then it goes, hello, take a listen to this. Did you know? So welcome, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
It seems like we're talking a lot about houses, like before we push the record button and push play on your album, right? It's like,
Yeah.
well, let's just talk about houses because this was written during the pandemic. So you were in a home when you wrote this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I was totally alone, sitting at the piano or picking up the guitar, or, when I have bits around time with the family and staying alive during a
Hmm.
pandemic. Yeah. Just working on it.
But this is interesting about like talking about how there's a familiarity, like a nostalgic feel when I listen, and then the originality and fresh sounds and new. So it's like old and progressive at the same time.
Well, thank you.
Did you mean
I,
to do that? Like how do you write this stuff? Like, because I'm going, this is cool. Like there's all these little nuances that really need to be there and not cluttered. And you have this dynamic that just, it's, how to suck people in to the
oh,
vortex of Steve McAllister, which is good. But you have these nuances, but you allow us to breathe. So it's not
um,
too much. Yeah, you're
yeah.
good.
Oh, thank you. The how I do it, I'm not really sure. I mean, I work a very, very long time on the writing part of it, just to try to make sure that all the chords kind of move from one to the other very smoothly, and the words all work as well as they can, and the melodies all work. Um, but I spend a whole lot of time on that part of it because I don't have a band in the room that I can throw ideas at and work off. Right.
Yeah.
One of the things I miss about working in a room with other people is you get real time ideas. So somebody will say, "Oh, what if we cut this in half and put that there, and then take this section and move it there?" It's like I don't have any of that, so I have to really, really, have to get kind of inside the song, and then I have to kind of get outside the song and look at it, and then get back inside it. And it's the compositional part is all that. It's all that solo thing, which is a lot of fun. Um, but then
Hmm.
I get everybody's input when we start recording too. So that's also great.
Well, I think there's something to be said for this because it's like you spend a lot of time on it, but that's an interesting thing to be in, like a painter, right? Someone painting. It's a
Yeah.
solo thing, yet you still have that, you've got collaborations, but at that beginning point, you're on your own. And there's a tendency where you like overdo it. You know what I mean? Or
Oh yeah.
get too picky with it and you have to like kill babies. Like I know it from writing articles and like, and there's like, oh, you have this best picture, like and it doesn't fit. And you're like, damn it. Like that was my thing. This is even what inspired it and it has to go. And so
That's
does that has got to have been an interesting process for you writing it and then taking it to people in that form.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And what's really interesting is there's the guy that did the cover art for me. He's done a lot of my album covers. He's an old friend and a brilliant painter. His name's Brooks Bergen, and he lives in Switzerland. And we've been friends since we were skateboarding together in high school. And we talk a lot, and talked through this album creation process while he was working on canvases and I was writing songs about that idea of, and about the process. It was very interesting to watch his process of going from a scribble to a finished painting, and when do you decide it's done? And
Mm,
and different people have different opinions on that, and so it was very fascinating. And a lot of that came into my process as well, because he was asking me the same questions, and I would play things on piano for him, and he would show me his process going from like a scratch on a Post-it note to a pre-painting to an underpainting to the painting itself, and how you make these decisions along the way. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because yeah, absolutely, there was a lot of that, looking at process as I went. Once I was able to have like a finished kind of a set song, having the other people play on it, it was wonderful, because it was like, I don't have to make the decision about how the drums go, right? Like,
it's just happening now. Yeah.
right. Like, you make the decision about how the drums go, and then I got to change things. That was the other wonderful thing, was that, I would send a track out to our drummer Rafael in Little Rock, not too far from you right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we'd work back and forth, and we'd get a finished drum track. And then I got to change my parts a little bit to kind of fit his drum track. And then it would go out to one of the guitarists and come back, and I would change my parts or alter them just a little bit, or add little things to kind of augment or support what the first guitar player was doing. And then it would go to the second guitar player. It was kind of this round robin thing. So to kind of get a cohesive feel. And it was so fun to do that, because I didn't have to really I never tell anybody what to play. Why would I tell them what to play? They're great,
yeah.
And so that part of it was so much fun for me, because I got to see how other people reacted to music too.
I think that is really cool. Like, writers do that, songwriters, and then writers, fiction writers, nonfiction, where they write something and it goes to like a writers group, and they'll critique it and read it and go, well, this part, that part. And it's not like an attack. And that's the thing. When you're with, people that get it, it's all about supporting the project. Everybody's name is on the project. It needs to be the best piece of music that goes out. Like, right. What can we do to make it the best for the listener? And so I was saying, you have this breathability in your music that, cause it just, there's a nostalgic part. One of the songs that I definitely want to talk the third side of an egg. I have two friends, personal friends, who are going to love that you bring up three sides. But A Letter to My Son. I love that you put that as like the ninth track, and then it goes to Sailor's Waltz at the end. Like the waltz at the end of that reminds me of old schools, like the last waltz, but like there's just like that part is like nostalgic to me of classic rock and music that has gone through the ages. And it was perfect right after A Letter to My Son. And A Letter to My Son, I mean, it was beautiful at the same, and just like this, it's incredibly heartfelt, but just in the tone of your piano is amazing, by the way, through the whole album. That was one thing that it really picked up, but kind of like immediately I felt Ray Charles-ish and then John Lennon-ish, but it's not, because it's yours. And that's where I say, like, there's these familiar sounds, but like totally fresh and new. Like, you don't know what to expect on the next song, yet you're breathing throughout the album, not in this, because people get scared to listen to new things. I'm different. I'm like excited. Like, I want new stuff all the time. So I'm ADD about, or whatever you call it, for music. I'm like, I want it now. Like, let me hear it. But the breathability allows you to really just sit and savor. And then when you go back in and listen, you hear new things. And I love that about music, that can be so layered, but have that, like, you know how you sip wine? Yeah. So you can smell everything, taste everything. That's it. Like, that is, I love albums like yours with that, where it becomes this experience and you just don't know. It's familiar, but not. Right. And that song, A Letter to My Son, just really kind of did that for me, where it's like, oh yeah, I kind of had that Lennon-ish feel, but it's not at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's, and it's weird too, like, as the writer, like, sometimes there are some songs on the album that I pored over for months, or had an idea that very, very slowly developed and grew. And there are other ones like that one that came out almost as quickly as it sounds on the record. Like, I kind of sat down at the piano and I had the idea, I sat down at the piano and I was kind of just noodling around to sort of put out the feeling I was having out. And it didn't take too long, and maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10, and I had almost the whole thing. And it took a little while. It took a little while to refine it, but the bulk of it was there, and I was like, wow, that's a song. I'm pretty done with that one, pretty happy with that one. And as much as, you know, I was talking about earlier about kind of refining and looking through as I did that, you know, I kind of put it aside for a little while and then came back and then put it aside and came back. I found like I'm not really changing this much. There's not really, like, I could change it, but it doesn't necessarily make it better, just different. So I'm just going to leave it as it is.
Yeah, because it was just like it was like something, you know, it was a letter to your son. It's like honest and real. And if you overproduce that, then it ruins it. You know what I mean? Because it's an honest, raw song.
Yeah.
Know?
Yeah. Well,
The
lyrically,
sentiment.
like, yeah, exactly. The sentiment was there. I was able to, I don't know how, like like, when they come really fast, sometimes it's a little scary, frightening for real. Because on the one hand, you think, "Hey, I finally learned how to write songs," and then nothing else comes that fast for a long time.
Or do you get the moment of like, oh God, not now? Do you get that
Sometimes.
too?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, because it's like, oh no, not now. Can you wait like half an hour? I got something else to do.
No,
But no, you better take it.
and they happen when my brain is in that weird calm mode. Either driving, it is a big one,
Mm.
or about to go to sleep. That's a big one. And I've learned, like, if I pick up my phone and I sing into it, it's normally just comes out a garbled mess. So I either have to be really, really specific when I'm singing and call out as much of the data as I can, or just get up and go grab an instrument and
Get on
put
with
your
it.
idea down. Yeah.
That's why coffee exists. You know,
Exactly.
coffee is I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't be drinking coffee. Apparently, I don't know. I actually know, but
I
now
fully support you in your caffeine and your coffee.
yeah, you know, but as you get older, it's like, how much can you really have? It's almost like, you know, it becomes a thing. You can't have that much of it, but I don't know. I try, you know, because yeah, because you want those hours, and there's something about the wee hours too. When you know everybody's asleep, where it's almost like you're the naughty kid sneaking out
Yep.
time.
Yeah. You can be a little freer. You can be a little louder. You don't have to worry about, like, if I sing this wrong or how does it sound. It's like, no, I can go
Ooh,
a little nuts.
that's something too about your writing process for this is doing it on your own without like, hey, I got this idea, let me do it, and then people look at you like, no. You know, I did that in a band, like where, you know, I wasn't well versed on how to bring a song to a band, and
Yeah.
they were pretty misogynistic, some of them. Um, but and then like me being shy about it didn't help, and not being good enough on my guitar to balance the writing, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can't be shy, but if you're at the beginning of something, it's like you screw yourself up trying to sell it to the rest of the music, because you do actually have to sell it, and you have to be in that comfortable space. So you do need to be on your own a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, it's really, but sharing a song like that with other people, like in a band situation, it's a very vulnerable spot. You are, because you're kind of opening your heart and you're saying, I created this thing that I think is good enough for us to work into a song. And so you have to be a little bit brave. You have to be a little bit vulnerable, because the rest of the band could say, that's garbage, Steve. We're not doing that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they won't even go down that road. But, you know, I certainly had that experience, and the way I kind of got around it, I was in a band for a long time, and the guitar player and I co-wrote a lot of songs together. And so if we wrote something together, great, we both knew it, and so we could both bring it to the band. But the other thing we found is we could, if he wrote something, he would teach it to me first, and if I wrote something, I would teach it to him first, and then we would approach the band. So we could sort of help each other fill in the gaps a little bit of
Yeah.
when we present it. It's not just one dude fumbling around on guitar. It's like, no, there's two people, and there's parts, and there's a harmony part, and there's, you know what I mean? Kind of fill in the sketch a little bit better to kind of gauge reaction.
So when you know, send off, because, and can we go back to who you put this album together with? I mean, you
Yeah.
know, let's just go. you didn't go just pick him up out of a newspaper. Like,
No,
like do we have that? Or Craigslist would be it. Do they even exist? You didn't find them on LinkedIn. You know what I mean? Well, do we
right.
have that anymore? Like, hey, looking for a drummer newspaper. Do we have that? Does that
We,
exist anymore?
we have that on Facebook.
I
Yep.
suppose. Okay.
Yeah.
It's different now. I
I see.
remember having, when we lived in San Diego, a thing called the newspaper called The Reader. And
Yeah,
that's how we got our gigs and met other musicians and stuff,
absolutely. Yeah.
Ah, okay. So now let's talk. You got Rafael. Tell everybody who Rafael is. Bernardo Gayol. Am I pronouncing his name correctly?
I think that's close. Yeah. Rafael
Yeah,
Bernardo
I was going to
Gayol.
leave it to you in case. So
Oh,
he's
no.
worked with Leonard Cohen, Robbie Robertson. Oh my God, Robbie. All of
Yeah.
them.
He's one of those guys that if you type his name into Wikipedia, he's got this enormous list of credits of people that he's played with. It's just, it's a ton of people. And he's just a great drummer. And beyond that, a really, really good, sweet person, I met him. He's lived in Austin a few different times, and I met him first many, many years ago. We tried to get a band together. We have a ton of friends in common, and I was starting to put this record together, and we kind of reconnected. And I asked him, I'm like, "Do you have?" I didn't even know where he lived at the time. I said, "Do you have the capability of recording where you are?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "Well, I'm working on this record." I kind of outlined it to him. I said, "Would you want to do it?" And he said yes. And I said, "That's great. Like, fantastic."
Well,
So
where
I
was he?
knew what
Where was he? Because I know
he
this
was.
went all over,
Yeah,
like all the way to England.
he was in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, okay. Hey, listen, Little Rock, right before the pandemic, we were in Little Rock for the first time. And they have this first Friday night thing where you go walk downtown and they
Uh-huh.
have artists and people doing demonstrations and musicians. It was one of the coolest nights of my life. Honest to God. This
Cool.
city is the coolest little music city just that one night, I should say. There were photographers that were actual journalists that were like, had all their photos of Little Rock and some of the history of Little Rock, which is, very complex. That's the word
Sure.
for it.
Sure.
Complicated.
Yeah.
But it was, every time I just like, Little Rock goes beyond Bill Clinton. I'm just going to say that, and because it hit that in Hot Springs, but Arkansas, like people, there is like serious good music that comes out of Arkansas, and I just had just bands that were just homegrown bands performing in different places downtown, and so I'm glad to hear he's from he's there because it's just good music. But so when you said you like. Here's the album. Are you sending them music charts? Are you sending them recordings? Like, how did you do this? And we'll get on to the rest of the people you worked with. But how did you do that?
So I'm
going to copy your process. That's why I'm asking.
Sure.
I'm just
Sure.
kidding.
Well, first, I'm very careful because I don't want to tell other people what to play. So I want to make sure that, like, I would sometimes program like a little drum loop or something like that so that I could play against something. So it was important for me to get the correct tempo and get the form of the song. And, this is how many measures everything is. And once I got that together, I'd play as much of it as I could to get the point across, but kind of not too much. There might be, rhythm guitar and piano, a bass, vocals, of course, scratch vocal. And for Roth, I would usually send him two versions of the song, one with whatever rhythm track I had, and then one without it. And I would give him the tempo, there'd be a count in and everything. And I don't know if he ever listened to the one with the rhythm track. I think he just listened to it without and did his thing.
Cool.
But he was able to put in, I don't exactly know his process. I don't know if he threw a click in on it and then was able to reference that while he played, or if he just played against the music.
He has dynamic, man. He really does.
Oh, he's fantastic.
I think that's part of the breathability in your album is his work. And I think everybody didn't step over and that's hard to do with the process that you did it in, where it's people aren't, did you have to layer the musicians? Like, okay, now we've got the drums, now we've got this, we've got, the guitars. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, very much
so that
so.
people didn't step on each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So Rafael, he would play stuff. Sometimes he would send me a track and say, I just let me know if I'm in the right ballpark. This is like my first pass. And there was one of those where I listened to it. I said, I don't only think you're in the right ballpark. I think that's the take.
Yeah,
It was great. And one of the great things about him is he will defend his positions. One of the first songs that we recorded together was the song No. And I had some very specific ideas about what I wanted in the drums, and he provided a drum take, and he said, this is the one that you should use. And I tried to go to him and say, no, I don't think that's right. It needs to be more like this. And he wouldn't hear it. He'd say, no, trust me.
The song is No, and I'm teaching you the song right now.
Well, also, like, why would I hire? And this, and this is a mantra I've used before in my life. Why would I hire a great drummer and then tell him what to play?
Right. Well, here's the deal. You always want to hire someone who can elevate, not, be beneath. You know what I mean? You want someone who has bigger ideas and can add to the pot. You know what I mean? Not, that's learning, right? And that's a leadership lesson that we never really talk about in music, is that leadership lesson, right? Of where do you let go and where don't you create in the creative process. I think all of this comes into your album. I think all of it, because it is a touch and go. It's a tenacity. You have this, that's that thing I was talking about, the breathability. It's got like an elastic thing going throughout the whole album, yet it's dreamy and moving you. And then some of it goes a little like, oh yeah, you're feeling this. It's going a little dark. Now we're bringing you back in. It's okay. But it's very much like what life is,
Yeah. And, I found many years ago, I worked with a photographer here in town, doing band pics. And we showed up and he said, what do you want? And I said, I don't know. You're the photographer. I hired you. Tell me what you want. I don't know. And I was being like half jokey, but I was also being very serious. And he laughed about that. We've actually laughed about that since then. But I took that same thought through this. I mean, I'm not going to tell these guys what to play. Hopefully, I'm able to communicate to them through the songwriting itself what kind of give this framework about where I want the song to go. And, they're all great musicians and they all picked up on it. And I don't think I ever, I occasionally gave like little nudges or gave little descriptions, but I don't think I ever told somebody, hey, this isn't working, do something else.
Yeah. Do you think that part of your, the quality of the album and that breathability and the communication, do you think part of that comes from you working on film scores where you're having to take all these people's vision of what this piece of screen time is going to be, the emotion, the visuals, and the music has to fit what's happening, the tempo, the pace. Do you think from being the music side of it, the composer, and having to deal with those different layers helps you in the communication for this album?
Maybe. Yeah. It's so the big trick I've found with, writing for any kind of visual thing is what you said exactly. It's the emotional part. Like, what is the emotional thing that's going on in the scene? Is it surprise? Is it fear? Is it, calmness, whatever it is? And then, certainly that was, I thought about like the emotional point, or maybe not even the emotional point, but like the center point of each song. Like if I had to boil down each song to one or two words, what would that be about? And then how can I support that? Or does it really work?
That's, I think that's really cool because, when you think about film scores, like, okay, someone's going to get their head chopped off, right? Now you don't have that's where the breathability amps up, and there is no breathability. Eventually you're amping it up. But what's I think what it is about this album, right? And even the title, which we should talk about, I hope you're okay, is that because of the breathability that I keep talking about over and over again, but there is that elasticity, right?
Yeah.
Is that you're allowing people to feel, and that's one of the hardest things in life, is to allow yourself to feel all those things. Because
Yeah.
that's why people drink and stuff and do drugs. It's like, I don't want to feel that, right? And
Yep.
I'm hiding that. Let's go over here where I don't need to. And eventually it will catch up. And eventually I think the pandemic made a lot of people have to face a lot of things all in the same house, all around the
Yeah.
world. And that was like, holy hell. And let me out for a walk. I want to be like dogs having to take their walk. I need out. Let me out. I'm out.
Yeah.
So I think, there was a lot of that in your album, and having the right musicians is key. But that's interesting about the breathability, understanding the emotion and going down to those nuggets. What do I want to make? That's cool. That's a cool lesson for anybody writing anything or creating any creative process, right?
Oh, thank you.
Or do you go like it just comes to you and then you're going to have to go with that's the feeling of it? You don't have to create the
I
feeling.
think I'm not sure, like, because I've done it both ways now. I mean, when I sit down at an instrument, or even better, if I'm not even at an instrument and it just starts coming, then then I just try to follow that. But usually it doesn't take too long to kind of figure out kind of the vibe of what it is that's coming out. You know what I mean? Like, y'all know very, very quickly, like, is this sad? Is there some kind of poignancy here? And that's going to help shape the rest of it. Or is this kind of like does this have a bounce to it that is not sad at all? It's got a happy, or there's a filament of joy running through it that I need to play up. Usually that will help tell. And even if I have lyrics at the beginning, like that, the lyric fragments and the music, like that will really tell like how they match, like what kind of area we're going into. And then I just try to follow that into there really as hard as I can.
And the lyrics are brilliant too. I mean, on it like a narcotic, that the lyrics in there are just like, they're perfect. They really are. Like, it's just so like, yep, there it is. And it's like, oh yeah. And then the third side of an egg, I can't leave that out.
Okay.
I love that song. I think that's my favorite. I think.
I hate like rank ordering songs and stuff, but that's probably the one that's closest to me. And it's the one that when I finished it, I played it for my wife, and she had a very interesting response. And she hears these songs sometimes for months on end as I'm playing them on the piano, trying to figure them out. Right. So she gets probably sick of them before I do. And she said something very interesting. She said, that's the most Steve McAllister song you've ever written. If anyone ever asks what your music sounds like, play them that one.
See, that's what I'm talking about, that originality, right? You met it. Like I said, your album is like a house that you've been to. Then you go up the driveway, the gardens change, you go inside, but you know that house. It's like deja vu, but it's fresh and new and different. Something changed. Yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's just listening, to me, I dig it. And then I'll listen to it, for the fourth time and go, all right, I changed my mind, and now it's this, now it's that, but that's a good album when you listen more than once and take something away differently each time. Those layers. And when you don't understand, you don't hear when the layers aren't in your face, when they just sneak into you, that's what I mean about that. It's, those subtle things that, when they're done with good dynamics and flow, it's brilliant. Let's go back to the people, that you've been playing with. These amazing, because we can't leave everybody out here because, we've got Rafael, now you've got Mike. I never pronounce anyone's names correctly or any place's names. So everybody, just blame me. Keneally?
It's Keneally.
Hey, I was almost there, right? So he worked with Frank Zappa and Steve Vai. Oh,
yeah, yeah. He's great, fantastic. He's a brilliant guitarist and keyboardist and songwriter and band leader. He's just one of those persons who can do dang near everything, just brilliant. And then with him was Dave Gregory, who is one of my favorite guitarists of all time. Mostly with his work with XTC, and just great player. And I'd worked with Dave. I'd hired him for a couple songs like a decade ago or so. And then maybe 8-9 years ago, Mike was in town touring with, I think, Joe Satriani. And it turned out that Mike and I have a friend in common. And so I asked our friend, hey, would you introduce me? And I reached out to Mike and I said, while you're in town in Austin, would you have time to come up and play on a song? And he said, yeah, you're a friend of, yeah, sure, we'll figure it out. So we did. And so we hung out. And while we were driving back to my place, I let him know that I had worked with Dave Gregory. And he is also a huge XTC fan and is friends with Dave. And he said something very interesting to me. He said, Dave is great, such a brilliant guitar player, really nice guy. And he and I have always talked about wanting to be in a band together.
Oh.
And I thought to myself, you could be in my band.
Well done.
That's hubris for you. So years later, I've kept up with Mike and Dave a little bit in the meantime. And this, I talked to Rafael. I'm starting to get recorded. And I kind of emailed everybody and said, hey, would you guys be interested in doing, a bunch of songs together? And everyone was in. And everyone was available. And so it I would take one song, I'd get the drums and put my parts on it. And then I would either send it to Mike first and then Dave, or some songs I would send to Dave first and then Mike, or whatever. And we just, we just kind of piecemealed it together like that. But the music that they played and what they brought to the table was just extraordinary work. Just absolutely brilliant.
So you had Dana Colley as well on sax.
Yeah.
And Donnie Wynn, who did extra drumming. So did he add drums or was he on separate pieces?
He is on one song. He's on A Letter to My Son.
Okay.
And I had done, I've worked with Donnie on and off for 20 years or so, in a variety of different bands and contexts and whatnot. Really sweet guy. Great drummer. And this was a track that I think I'd recorded just before the pandemic. And that was actually I think that's the only time that somebody was actually in the room with me recording, was that drum track. Dana Colley, always loved his sax work with Morphine. Like, I'm a huge fan of that band. And I reached out to him on Facebook and said, I'm a fan. Do you ever do work? And he said, yeah. So I sent him the track and he sent back his stuff. And I was like, this is amazing. This is great.
Wow. So you went all over, reading, everything about the album. California, Arizona, Arkansas, Massachusetts, Texas, obviously, and England.
Yeah.
Wow. And so everybody sends us off. You get it all back. Did you mix it and produce it all?
I produced it all. I would do rough mixes, but I am not a mix engineer. And, we talked about letting go. All the tracks but one were mixed by a mixer named Eric Seraphin. It's fantastic. I would send him my rough mix and I'd just send him the tracks and I'd say, do whatever you think you need to do. And again, I think on one mix, I said, could you just turn this down a little bit? But that whole letting go thing, why am I going to tell a professional mixer how to mix? Like, he is a guy and we've worked together a few times. Like, he gets it. He totally gets where I'm going. And, in my not very good mixer, like, I would live with these songs and I would mix them and I would get them what I thought was close. Oh, I'm 90%. I'm 92%. Yeah, Eric will make this. We'll put in that other 8. And he would send it back and he would triple what it was that I did. And I would just say, okay, yeah, that's great. That's awesome. I got nothing to say. Like, he made choices I wouldn't make, but they're perfectly great choices, and I love it. It's
So,
it's another one of those letting go things, you know.
well, letting go, and then, yeah, see, that's the breathability, going back to that, because you have to breathe to let go. Exhale. Um, the title, I Hope You're Okay. Tell us
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
You know, I part of music for me is a really it's an interesting way to kind of process and deal with my own mental health issues, and also kind of just the daily struggle of life, you know. And it felt like coming out of this pandemic, and I really the music was a way for me to kind of feel my best, and I was really kind of hoping that for everybody else too. And I wish I knew where that title specifically came from, but I was, thinking about titles, and I was like, hey, what about I Hope You Are Okay? Yeah, that works. I hope you are. And I wish that for everybody. I hope that you had something that you could do to
Mm-hmm.
help you come through all this, because I did. And
Yeah.
and I hope that you do too.
It's like, picking up the phone. Hope you're okay. You are, not your. See, I
Yeah.
shortened it already. See, I need breathability, apparently. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like I think it's a reminder. And during the pandemic, that was a reminder of like, oh, we took all these meetings and greetings for granted, you know?
Oh
And
yeah.
so then just picking up the phone and going, I hope you're okay, is a real deal,
Yeah. I
It's like, how
watched.
are you doing? Are you in? Are you, you know, maybe not drinking like 10 bottles of wine every day during
Right.
the
Right.
pandemic, eating all the cookies and the pie,
Yeah. 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 It's
and healthy and being
and
healthy.
everybody went through this, and everybody watched everybody go through this. I got kids and watched them. I watched my wife and me and our relationship and us individually, and it wasn't easy. It was an
It was
absolute dramatic change.
microscopic, wasn't it? Like we were
Yeah.
all under a microscope. Like we're all these little cells bumping into each other in one little tiny room. It's how our
Yes.
bodies must feel. All the little cells in our body must feel that way. It's like, you've got me trapped in here. And then you keep adding this in or that, and we really want this, and screw you, or okay, I'm helping you, but now you suck. You know,
Yeah. It was
all
very much
this,
like it's very much like an experiment. Oh, let's see what happens to you when we do this. Okay.
yeah,
Great.
right? I know. It felt like, you know what? I think the pandemic was like the Truman movie with Jim Carrey. Was it
Yeah.
Truman?
Yeah. It's the Truman Show. Sure.
Yeah, and what's funny is like there was like the end of the world for him. It's like, and then we have all the people that don't believe the world is round, and they think we have like ice walls, like what are the flat earthers or whatever
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is, and we're gonna bump into an ice wall. And I'm like, okay, that's the pandemic. It's called the wall of your house. That's
Yeah.
how it is. Oh man. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Steve, and glad we could even, today we thought we weren't going to make it happen, but we did. So I'm really glad. Everyone, again, I hope you are okay. The album is out now. You can get it on all the streaming places, but you can also go to Steve's website, SteveMcAllistermusic.com. It's MC like McAllister. So Scottish, right? Or am I
Yeah.
going to be wrong? Normally if there's an Alistair in there, it's Scottish, no matter how you
Yeah.
spell it. So Steve McAllister, music.com is a place to go. He's also on Facebook. And hey, best wishes with the album. I hope you're going to do some of the music live. Is that a thing that's going to happen?
I've just started to look into that. So yeah, I really hope so.
Yay. Very cool. Oh, I hope so. That'll be
Well,
awesome.
thank you so
Well,
much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
thank you, Steve. Everyone, thank you for listening. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. It's been a pleasure.
Now